Usually when an anime references a piece of Western media, it's oftentimes surface level. They'll reference a character or a piece of literature, and the representation will only go so far as the subject, and oftentimes not really the characteristics or themes they represent. While stories will often borrow from other stories, they reference something to get a nugget of an idea across to the viewer. Yet some references break this mold. One anime in particular I would like to talk about is Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. Specifically, I want to talk about the first season, which focuses largely on the Laughing Man. To you more well-read folks, you might recognize The Laughing Man as the title of one of J.D. Salinger's non-Catcher-in-the-Rye short stories. The character of the Laughing Man, and indeed the circumstances surrounding him and his place, not only borrow the legendary title and quotes from Salinger's works, but indeed Ghost in the Shell borrows Salinger's ideas and themes wholesale and incorporates them into a cyberpunk landscape, with socio-political commentaries on corruption and personhood. So in this we have cyberpunk, heavy themes from classic American literature, action, and top-tier waifu bait? Yeah. All these and more are reasons why Ghost in the Shell is my favorite franchise of all time. And with a new installment of Standalone Complex coming this year to Netflix, I think it is the perfect time to take an extra deep dive into The Laughing Man. I would warn you all for spoilers, but Standalone Complex is nearly 20 years old now, so yeah, you guys better get on that. Also, this first part will be a detailed summary of Season 1's main story. This video isn't intended to be a simple regurgitation of events that happened in the show, but for my points to get across, I think it is important for you, the viewer, to have all the events fresh in your mind when we look into the literary themes and parallels between The Laughing Man and Salinger. For context, if you'd like to watch Standalone Complex for yourself and only want to focus on The Laughing Man, then you will need to watch episodes 4, 5, 6, 9, 11, and episodes 20 onwards until 26. The rest of the episodes are great, with various character developments and their own memorable moments, but are nonetheless designated as filler. Like with all great stories, we should really start at the very beginning, before Section 9 and Makoto Kusanagi had ever even gotten involved. Before any of this in the anime had ever taken place, we should begin with the Laughing Man incident. The date was February 3rd, 2024, a day like any other for the people of Japan. The morning news was in the middle of their morning broadcast when shouting erupted in the crowd. A man in a blue fleece coat and hat held another man at gunpoint and pushed him in front of a camera. The man being led was Mr. Serrano, CEO of Serrano Genomics, a micro-machines manufacturer who had been kidnapped just a day before. The man holding the gun hid his face from at first, but soon the camera's AI was hacked, and his face was replaced with what would be known from then on as the Laughing Man logo. The man with the gun demanded that Mr. Serrano told the truth, to look right into the camera and tell the world the truth that needed to be revealed. Mr. Serrano backed down and refused to talk at all. This would only go on for less than a minute, before the man was forced to flee. When the Laughing Man fled, he would hack onlookers' eyes in real time to mask his face with his pop icon. The only people who had seen his real face were two homeless men with no cyberization at all. There were dozens of eyewitnesses and camera footage of the suspect fleeing, but no matter how hard they were questioned or interrogated, the composite sketch would come back as the pop icon every time. This image, which featured a blue smiling face with a sideways baseball cap and the text that read, "I thought what I'd do was, I'd pretend to be one of those deaf mutes," circling it, would become a mimetic force in online counterculture. Despite the fact that the one who held Mr. Serrano hostage never referred to himself directly as the Laughing Man, the logo and the name stuck with him. And we'll get back to that later on in this video series. This seemingly sporadic moment would forever be known as the Laughing Man incident. For 6 years, the police and megacorporations alike spun their wheels trying to find out more about the Laughing Man and take him down, but none were successful. After the incident, the next 6 years would see a rampant wave of corporate terrorism and extortion, with the Laughing Man going after large micro-machine corporations with blackmail and other extortionist means. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he stopped. That was 6 years ago. Fast forward to where Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex begins, and something seemingly unrelated to the entire affair brings the Laughing Man out again, police surveillance, and interceptors. Section 9's Togusa is given a case after a friend of his within the police force is found dead under suspicious circumstances. He was on the verge of breaking a big case regarding higher-ups within the police force. Togusa is given a series of strange photos, and after a tasteful nod to Blade Runner, Togusa comes to the realization that the photos were taken via interceptors, unknowingly planted within various investigators of the Laughing Man case. In a nutshell, interceptors are nanobots that are planted within a person and record audio and video without their knowledge. While this technology had just become legal in this world of Ghost in the Shell, at the time they were placed within these key investigators, it wasn't. This information is leaked by Section 9 to the press, and the growing pressure forces the police commissioner to hold a press conference regarding this growing scandal. It is here where the Laughing Man emerges. The police commissioner denies any responsibility in this scandal, even though he has good ties with our good buddies at Serrano Genomics, the micro-machines manufacturer who just so happened to make these interceptors. The press conference comes to a boil when one of the police officials is hacked on live television, and a familiar logo appears. The Laughing Man has declared that, unlike his previous farce, if the truth is not revealed this time around, he will be forced to remove those who would cover up the truth, and which would include the commissioner himself. And thus, after 6 years of relative silence, the Laughing Man joins the fight once again. With the resurgence of the Laughing Man, everyone is on edge and more anxious than ever to see what exactly the super A-class hacker has planned. What truth does he want to be revealed? Just how deep does this go? During his investigation into the interceptors, Togusa met with an investigator in the police force, who let slip that they were just about to process and apprehend someone who they believed to be the Laughing Man. For a while, a man named Nanao A had been their primary suspect, with their evidence being that he is an ex-Serrano Genomics employee with a history of anti-capitalist activities. Section 9 surmises that the police will arrest Nanao and pin him as the Laughing Man to try and cover up this allegations of corruption. However, the Laughing Man beats both the police and Section 9 to the punch, and kills Nanao. During this, the Superintendent General of the police force is set to give a speech regarding the interceptor scandal, and the Laughing Man strikes again, hacking one of the officials present and threatening the Superintendent General's life. What happens next, in this case, can only be described as a disaster of mimetic proportions. With the Laughing Man's threat out there, Kusanagi and the others of Section 9 think that the threat to the Superintendent General's life will come from somebody close to him and being hacked and taken over, just as the Laughing Man had done before. While they try and evacuate the Superintendent General from the building, the rest of Section 9 at their HQ try to develop a vaccine for the virus the Laughing Man uses to take over people's bodies. However, while they are evacuating him, random citizens from the crowd try and assassinate the Superintendent General. All of them claim to be the Laughing Man. Over 30 people are arrested and detained for their attempted assassinations, and Section 9 seems to get the vaccine done in time. However, there is no virus. None of the people who attempted to assassinate the Superintendent General were under any sort of control or virus. They had all just come of their own accord, in accordance with the Laughing Man's threat to try and kill the Superintendent General. It is here where we get our first instance of standalone complex, a dissociated number of individuals all responding to a common stimulus, thus the Laughing Man threat, and act with accordance, not communicating with each other or the primary source. Ghost in the Shell standalone complex came out in 2002, when the internet meme culture was in its primordial state. It is scary how accurate this anime predicted the effects and spread of meme culture. The episode itself, ironically enough, is called Meme. After the Laughing Man incident, originally in 2024, every aspect of the Laughing Man had become an icon of counterculture. The logo, the anti-corporate sentiments, and corporate terroristic tendencies. We see this manifest in the next episode related to the Laughing Man, Chat, Chat, Chat. Here, we see a fan club of sorts discuss at length the Laughing Man incident. Different theories are proposed during the discussion, including the idea that the Laughing Man may not even be one person, but a multitude of people all working under the moniker. One fact that does stick out from the rest of the discussion is after the Laughing Man incident, he changes his MO from kidnapping to corporate blackmail. Many people in the room find this point odd, including Kusanagi herself. One person in particular seems to know more about the Laughing Man than he lets on, which doesn't go unnoticed by Kusanagi. She takes him into a private chat room, and he reveals that he saw the entire assassination plot unfold from afar, hacking into one of the security cameras just to see, saying that the Laughing Man's skills are a work of art. It's soon revealed that the chat room itself is just a front, and the Laughing Man himself was watching the entire time. Kusanagi gets a brief look at the mysterious man before he disappears into the net. Back in the real world, Togusa has his eyes on the Ministry of Health, Welfare, and Labor. Recently, they had been hacked, and a slew of sensitive data had been stolen. Section 9 believes that the hack originated from within a facility controlled by the Ministry. The facility in question is a center where patients suffering from cyberbrain closed shell syndrome are treated. The CSS is a fictional disease, of course, and is really more akin to cyberized autism. Those who take too well to having cyberbrains often shut themselves away from the outside world. This is often to protect themselves and others from their manic episodes people with CSS tend to have. The other common ailment connected to cyberization is cyberbrain sclerosis. We will talk about that in this very video. In the net, people with CSS show a high aptitude for constructing and deconstructing attack barriers and programs. And because of that, the facility uses the patients to construct complex and intricate attack barriers and programs, which they then sell off as a profit. During his undercover work, Togusa is left in charge of a kid named Aoi, who is both deaf and mute. He hears through the grapevine of a mysterious chief, or leader in the subbed versions, that visited them during the Ministry's hack. The kids at the facility talk highly of the chief and can't wait to see him again. Togusa is close to a breakthrough within the facility, but some suspicious activity occurs. Simultaneously, the facility's security systems are turned on and Section 9's databases are hacked, causing Togusa to be needed in extraction immediately. In the confusion, the kid that Togusa was looking after disappears without a trace. No record of Aoi's existence is even seen in any of the testimony of the kids or the facility's databases. But Togusa remembers the kid clearly. He even describes the kid to a sketch artist, but all that comes back is the Laughing Man logo. After the events in the facility, Togusa does a deep dive of his own into J.D. Salinger's works. Togusa was spurred to read Catcher in the Rye after the Laughing Man's quote was found scrawled on the wall of the facility. He develops a theory that the Laughing Man wants something physical, printed on paper, some hard evidence of his goals, of his truth. He follows this theory, heading to the Ministry of Health, Welfare, and Labor's physical records, and discovers that there is a vital file missing, a list of trial patients of the Mirai vaccine. And it is here that we come back to the issue of cyberbrain sclerosis. Cyberbrain sclerosis, or CS, is a phenomenon of brain tissue hardening after you undergo cyberization. There is no cure for CS, and while everyone who has a cyberbrain is at risk, the chances of actually contracting CS are rare. However, since there is no cure, the disease is fatal. To understand how common cyberbrains are in Ghost in the Shell, imagine just how many smartphones there are. That's basically the amount of cyberbrains, as these are basically smartphone brains. Their utility is widespread and universal, so you can imagine how serious cyberbrain sclerosis is to people. In the show, it is said to rival cancer with how impactful and devastating the disease can be, and just how widespread its reach is. So what exactly is the Mirai vaccine? Well, to put it simply, it was potentially the cure for cyberbrain sclerosis. Patients who were given this vaccine were shown to respond positively to it, some even being cured altogether. There was just one hitch. No one knew exactly how it worked. Not even the creator of the vaccine, Chisote Mirai, knew how it worked. He developed this vaccine completely by accident while researching patients with CS. So the good news is the vaccine works, and there were preliminary trials, but no one could really pinpoint how this vaccine worked. It just kind of did. And at the time, a new technology emerged as well. Micromachines. No, not those micromachines. Yes, those micromachines. Like any new technology, their application can be infinite. Also, like any new technology, it can be extremely profitable. Micromachines showed great promise. Their effectiveness in cleaning out radiation after a nuclear fallout showed to be miraculous, so there was really no telling what they could do or what they could be implemented with. And so, in favor of micromachines, the Mirai vaccine was declined approval However, the list of recipients was kept tucked away in the files of the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare. And on that list, the list the Laughing Man stole, was one Hisashi Imakarus. Now, you might be wondering, obviously, who dat? Well, Imakarus was the man who ultimately denied the Mirai vaccine to be implemented, creating a custom approval denied stamp just for the occasion. So what is his name doing on a recipient list of the Mirai vaccine? Well, to put two and two together, Imakarus suffers from the late stages of CS, and is being kept alive solely by the vaccine. This blatant hypocrisy is Imakarus' greatest regret. So the question really is just, why? Why deny the vaccine? Why keep it hidden? Imakarus had dedicated his entire life to finishing and finding a cure for CS, only to have Mirai accidentally find the closest thing to it before he could. It was this jealousy, mixed with a significant kickback from the micromachines industry, that ultimately led Imakarus to reject the vaccine. He admits in private that if Mirai had just shown his work, if he could just figure out how exactly the vaccine works, then he would have approved it no problem. But it wasn't enough. It was his mix of jealousy and greed that led the vaccine to be suppressed. And because of that, micromachines, a new technology that had shown little to no results on the effectiveness to fight CS, had been used as a chief treatment against the disease. Now that was some fun backstory and all, but let's get back to the real story. Tokusa discovers the file is missing, and finds out that it had been given to an advocacy group called the Sunflower Society, who try to reverse the board's approval decision and have the Mirai vaccine distributed to those and treat them with cyberbrain sclerosis. This list is the greatest gift the group had ever received. Or it would be, had the pockets of government officials not been so deep. The head of the DEA finds out more about this breach and uses the Narc Suppression Squad to take out the Sunflower Society and retrieve the list. Tokusa is there just as the NSS storms the building, and with the list gone and Tokusa critically wounded, the last hope for Section 9 at unraveling this case is to locate Imakarus, who had just gone into hiding at the beginning of this whole thing. And now the race is on. Who will find Imakarus first, Section 9 or the Narc Suppression Squad? Vote now on your phones. Surprise, it's Section 9, and there's a cool battle with a giant freaking robot. Sadly, epic gunfights with giant freaking robots come at a price, and this price is Imakarus is ultimately gunned down by the DEA. However, with the NSS leader in custody after the giant freaking robot battle, he rats out the DEA, and Section 9 has enough evidence to arrest them or the raid on the Sunflower Society. But Section 9 better watch themselves. The real puppet master behind all of this has friends in high places. Speaking of high, the remaining members of the Narc Suppression Squad try and frame Section 9 in a drug trafficking scandal to get them to back off of this whole Laughing Man business, and one of them even tries to assassinate Kusanagi herself when the most unlikely ally comes to her aid, the Laughing Man himself. He has no other options. He feels he can't reveal the truth he set out to show the world, and as a last-ditch effort, he comes to Kusanagi and gives her his memories of what really happened that day on the Laughing Man incident. Armed with this knowledge, there was just one thing left to do: kidnap Mr. Serrano one more time. Since the Laughing Man incident, Mr. Serrano had been put under house arrest. Publicly, it was for his own protection, but privately, it was so that the powers that be make sure that he doesn't spill the beans on their little operation. The Laughing Man kidnaps Serrano easily enough. He did it once, and he can just do it again. And they go to the same coffee shop that overlooks the plaza where the Laughing Man incident had occurred originally, all those years ago. And they reminisce of what exactly had led up to that point. It is revealed to us, the viewer, that Mr. Serrano, and by large Serrano Genomics, knew full well that micromachines were ineffective with combating cyberbrain sclerosis and that the Mirai vaccine was the best bet anyone had at fighting the disease. Given all this, plus the power Serrano Genomics had, the Laughing Man pleaded with Mr. Serrano. He wanted him to tell the truth, to get the vaccine approved, and for him to help people, to do the right thing. And Mr. Serrano refused. Frustrated beyond all belief and filled with the lofty ideal of exposing the truth and defeating all the phonies in this world, the Laughing Man held Mr. Serrano at gunpoint and dragged him in front of the live broadcast, demanding that he tell the truth. He'd tell the whole world the truth. It was then, and so it is now, that the Laughing Man is left with nothing but his lofty ideals to rid the world of phonies. While he is not as brash and trigger-happy as before, ultimately the Laughing Man was unable to bring about his ideal world on his own, and needed to rely on Section 9 for the truth to finally be revealed. Because after the initial Laughing Man incident, the corporate blackmail and extortion that had popped up as a result wasn't actually perpetuated by the man we now know as Aoi, or the Laughing Man, but instead was a cabal of corrupt Japanese politicians and businessmen looking to use the Laughing Man phenomena to their own benefit in racketeering an absurd profit in the Micro Machines industry, and to suppress the truth about the Mirai vaccine. Episodes 24 to 26 deal a lot with the Japanese politics of the matter and the result of the truth being revealed from Section 9 and the Laughing Man. But Aoi himself doesn't really appear until the tail end of the season, so we'll have to just save that for a later time in this video series. After all this, you might be just asking yourself, well, how did this all start? And it was actually by chance. As anticlimactic as it is, Aoi came across a discarded email on the net, a complaint to Serrano Genomics accusing them of corruption with the cover-up of the Mirai vaccine. Aoi didn't know who wrote the email, and we're never told either. This whole incident, this whole Salinger-esque plot and quest to rid the world of phonies and to bring truth to light, all came from happenstance. It really makes you think. In the next part, we'll be taking a closer look at Aoi himself, the Laughing Man, and just what exactly his ideals meant to him. We will be looking at a deep dive into the lofty ideals of activism versus the harsh realities of politics.